Hello there. I am just about to begin the second stream of my channel. So just give me a few moments to set it up. Excellent. Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, or evening more like, but...
Good evening.
One moment. Oh. Let's see.
So we have 40 minutes for the meeting.
Yeah, for the basic membership of Zoom, at least.
Yes, it seems that Zoom has this structure where it tries to lure one in with this capability of getting a large number of people to join, but for meeting with a large number of people, 40 minutes is cutting it a bit short, and this is how they incentivize people to upgrade.
Yep. Gotta grab that dough. That it?
Business
Quite a
model.
few more people interested in joining.
Well, someone else says Ryan Hibbs can't make it today. Someone paste the transcript in chat. Okay, we can do that. But I think, given the time limit, we should begin, and then if other people join us, then so be it. It looks like Bobby is not going to make it to this one, though he was online yesterday. He was live streaming at night in a rather uncoordinated manner, I would say.
Yeah, I got a notification at like 1 o'clock in the morning. Like, what the...
So I have a bit of a history with Bobby, just to let you know, in that, well, James, you attended our enlightenment salons, and I've always been trying to put Bobby on the right path, so to speak, by giving him resources, opportunities to succeed. But I do think he needs more mentoring. He needs people who kind of give him a sense of what is realistically possible and what isn't. And we can all play that role, because I think he has some good ideas, he has motivation, but he needs to have more self-restraint, and he needs to have more of a work ethic. He can't just say, oh, I'm going to do all this great stuff, without having the foundation to be able to do it and putting in the effort to be able to do it.
All right, he's a little disorganized. But I'm working with him a little bit. Actually, he had some pretty good ideas for supplement wise, and I was looking to start a life extension supplement brand anyway. So actually, me and him have been negotiating here the last couple of days, and probably going to be looking to incorporate here in the next week or so.
So you're the business partner he spoke of. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I don't know. I think he's had a couple of them that he spoke of, but I think I'm the newest one.
Right. Just a bit of advice. Always make sure you have evidence for every one of his assertions. When he says something, if he can document it, if he can show you the evidence, then that's fine. I kind of try to guide him in the collaborations that he and I have done, but it's always been kind of on a case-by-case basis. If I think he's capable of doing something and carrying through, then I'll work with him on it. If I think he's gone off the rails and is doing something completely unrealistic, I'll let him know about that, and I'll kind of try to gently steer him back onto the proper course. But that's the key. He needs to have a lot of people who are telling him what is realistic here, what can be achieved, and make sure his energy is used constructively.
Right. Yeah. The biggest bonus there with him, what I like about him, is just that he has a lot of passion. It's not very organized passion, but it's passion. So he likes to get out there, but he's a little disorganized, I've noticed.
Right.
But luckily, I'm going to be mostly running things, so he's going to be doing his part, though. So
yes. Your business, your collaboration, whatever it is, it needs structure behind it. And if you can provide the structure, then he can go off and espouse the rhetoric and draw people in. He's good at making connections among people. He brought us together in this meeting format in a way, even though he's not here. And other people have said the same thing. So he has a role in this movement. But I think in a movement like this, we all need to recognize what our respective strengths are and where we need to complement one another.
Right. That's the idea. That's my idea also. I mean, as a life extensionist, we have to, in my opinion, not only think about today, but we have to make decisions and think about it as though we're planning for the next 1,000 years, because a lot of life extensionists are kind of planning for the next 20 or 30 years, but that automatically, denotes their confidence in life extension for themselves.
Right. Well, there is this singularitarian idea, the idea that there's going to be some sort of event horizon beyond which we wouldn't be able to predict what existence will be like. I tend to think there's probably going to be a bit more continuity than that, in the sense that at least at every single point in time, we're able to have some sort of foresight. And I do think there could be a different way to envision the future, rather than thinking about, well, what exactly is going to happen. That's very difficult to foresee. We need to think about systems that are adaptable to a wide range of outcomes. Robustness, resiliency, especially important in the light of COVID-19 or other pandemics. It's useful to be able to ask the question, well, what sorts of situations, what sorts of preparations could make an individual less vulnerable to this, or could make a society less vulnerable to this? So I've been thinking a lot along these lines, of course, with the U.S. Transhumanist Party and our proposals to improve the resiliency and response capability of our society to such pandemics. But also I've been thinking, well, what will happen if this comes in multiple waves? So these social distancing restrictions, they can't last much longer than another month, I think, because people are already hurting financially, and eventually governments are going to have to decide at least to partially relax them and say, okay, if you've had the disease and you've recovered, you can go back to work. If you're in a low-risk demographic, you can go back to work. Certain types of businesses may reopen with some limits maybe on capacity or how people are to behave next to one another. Anything is going to be better than this situation. But this is going to probably come in multiple waves, 2 or 3 waves, at least until a vaccine is developed. So in this case, it's worthwhile to think, how do we prepare for that? What do we need to have as individuals in order to not make this painful for us? So
Right. That's kind of what I've been talking to Bobby about. That it seems to me that a lot of people are interested in life extension, but they're kind of sitting back to see what's going to happen and thinking more from an adaptability perspective, where I believe, from my perspective, that we can get on board and go ahead and plan and guide the future. We can build it rather than just waiting for it to happen and hoping that we guessed right and that we can adapt to it. If we actively build it, we'll have much more control over what's happening and much more understanding.
I agree. James, you were going to say something.
Yes. Well, I was going to comment earlier that while people probably only plan ahead a decade or so simply because you never know what's going to happen next. Like, smartphones came in like a dark horse and changed everything, and no one expected the Chinese to screw up containment of a biological weapon, because I've seen the genetics of this virus. There's no way in heck that it was a natural virus. Although I'll let the experts twiddle on that later.
I think humankind is insufficiently advanced to be able to engineer a virus like this at this time. There is a lot in every country's response to this epidemic that has been frankly pathetic and primitive. And this leads me to think that this is just like the myriad other pandemics that occurred throughout history. Just yesterday, I'm going to send this in the chat because this is instructive. I was looking at the Wikipedia list of epidemics because it is extensive, and this has death toll as well. And the reason why I bring this up is because since the time of ancient Athens, at least, and I'm sure there were many others before, there were epidemics that claimed hundreds of thousands or millions of lives, and humans were woefully unprepared for them then. We're still woefully unprepared for them, perhaps a little bit better prepared because we have some ability to test, we have some idea of the germ theory of disease, how infections spread. But the fact is, we just engage in such a variety of activities that sometimes these pathogens are going to migrate from one species to another, and the rest of us don't have that immunity. And for a while, the epidemic devastates populations. I just hope that right now we can keep the death toll in the low hundreds of thousands throughout the world rather than the millions.
About that, now they'll never fully admit to this because, well, information is kind of kept close to their ear in China. But last month, although I can't really show it on Facebook because it's IP banned, it's range banned, because it's a Chinese news source, but about 22 million Chinese cell phone plans were canceled all at the same time. You could, if you look it up, you could probably find it, but
what you could do is take a screenshot, post the screenshot image.
Okay, I'll do that if I can find it again, because it was easier when I was in Japan, because, well, I'm able to access a lot more there, but now that I'm back here, it's harder to get a hold of things. But the thing about cell phone plans in China is that they're your ID, they're your wallet, they're your passport, they're your train ticket. It's the last thing you would cancel. You would go without food before you go without your cell phone plan. So that many canceled at the same time is concerning, to say the least.
Do you think they're dead?
Well, as I said, you would go without food before canceling your cell phone plan. So probably maybe not all of them. There's probably a few people saying, "Oh, I don't need this second account." But with how poor a lot of people in China are, despite their growing middle class, there's likely at least 1 million of them are dead.
Well, I think it would be impossible to cover up a death toll of this magnitude. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if the official numbers were off by a factor of 2, because some deaths that are due to COVID-19 might not be reported as being due to COVID-19. People might die of pneumonia or cardiovascular issues, especially if they're old and they have a variety of underlying conditions. It's fairly easy to overlook a COVID-19 death. And this is one complicating factor here. But I don't think they're off by more than an order of magnitude.
See, I respect your belief. It's just that I don't believe it, because where I was in Japan, I went to Hiroshima University until recently, like for this past year, and they have the highest concentration of international students, mostly Chinese students, and they have much more ready access to footage coming out of there. And some of the things they showed me, because I was friends with a few, were concerning, to say the least, because I saw mounds of corpses. Their crematoriums could not keep up with the demand, because that's just how many dead there were. Now, I don't know why there aren't more in Western media. That's just what I was shown and given. I would post it on Facebook, but I would get banned because they're really trigger happy when it comes to snuff films. Or not really snuff films, but carnage.
Well, I think no doubt, looking at this from any common sense point of view, and also looking at the math that's being used even within our country, that the numbers are being skewed. The fact that they're comparing death rates to infection rates, that's bad math, because the infection rate is a current, someone who's currently infected. A death rate is a final outcome that should be compared to those that have been cured or have finished off the virus and come through it, a final outcome. So I do believe the math is off a little bit, and in some places more than others. Some of that you could account to it's just not being reported accurately. I believe from, first round COVID-19 that there are a higher death toll than what we know about as the public. And I believe that secondary and third time effects going on down the line, that, a lot of these people are having, organ problems. The disease is, 30-40% less lung capacity, so that it's possible that they may get the cold, or in 5-10 years, all of the people who are infected may end up with, lung cancer. So, I mean, there's probably going to be much higher rates of death. And that's not even including if things go far enough and alliances fall apart that we actually end up in some type of wars. I believe, everybody's kind of pointing the finger at China. So they may be covering some things that, to some degree, as a self-preservation technique.
Well, I definitely think one does not want to get this virus because there are so many unknowns. And as you pointed out, there could be long-term effects that even the survivors experience. And that's the big unknown right now that won't be known for a number of years. So the sooner we can get this disease completely eradicated, the better, I would say. I am concerned about the large. Hello?
You're breaking up a little bit there on my side.
Yeah, you're breaking up on my side too.
Yeah.
Bloody internet.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you a little bit better right now.
Hello? Looks like I'm back.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. My internet connection is flawed, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, everybody's online, because they're stuck at home and they don't have much else to do. So probably having internet difficulties everywhere.
Right. So I was saying, essentially, there are these long-term effects that we don't know about. So the best way to deal with this is try to eradicate the virus to the greatest extent possible. But there is this defeatist attitude among many governments that suggest that, we need to just flatten the curve and prolong the epidemic, but at lower levels. And I don't think that's good enough. I mean, it's better than getting the virus earlier, because the virus could mutate, and generally if it mutates, it'll mutate in a less virulent direction, because these viruses, it's not to their advantage to kill the host. It's just the newer viruses that haven't had the benefit of prolonged evolution haven't really adapted to their hosts well enough yet. But the viruses that are longest lasting, the reason why the cold and the flu return every season is because they've adapted to their hosts, so they don't have to kill most of them. But this one is new and more virulent as a result.
Yeah, I had a quick question real quick. Bobby's messaging me on the other side there. I asked him if he was going to be a part of the meeting, but he said that he wasn't invited. So I guess that's why he's not here. But so he was, I guess, wanting me to ask, is he invited?
Well,
of course. I mean, I pasted it in the Life Extension chat. In fact, I just put a new URL.
Yeah, everyone is in that chat, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bobby is
sending him the link.
The admin of that chat. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sending him the link.
Yes, so I hope that the infection rates will subside sooner rather than later, because that's what will prevent economic collapse and the associated unrest. The societal and economic fallout from this could be greater than the damage from the disease, especially if we start having riots, if we start having lack of health care for other conditions. That's really bad. Hello, Bobby.
Hey, Bobby.
Hey, everyone. So it's just us three, it looks like.
Yeah, I made sure to give notice, and said, instead of yesterday, I'm like, you know what, it's too short notice, so a day. But these are the people that showed up. But I know other people saw it. You can see it in the messenger chat. Who sees it?
For sure. Yeah, we should probably get out of that messenger chat, honestly. For example, Max Anderson, he kind of did me wrong pretty bad. And he's in that chat, so I recommend not being in that chat anymore. Maybe make it a different group. But yeah.
Yeah, we're just talking about the the crisis going on here with the COVID-19 and possible long-lasting effects and where we should be moving at the moment. I'm definitely, I saw things coming, so I self-quarantined about 2 weeks before it really came out that they were recommending that. So, I got lucky and got plenty of toilet paper.
Yeah, that's hard to find these days. Even paper towels. I'm fine with toilet paper because I always try to have at least 60 rolls. That was my practice before all of this happened. But with paper towels, I kind of let myself slip. And right now I have maybe 5 rolls left.
Oh, yeah. Oh wow. Yeah. Luckily I bought up on that paper towels, and then just in case I also got baby wipes. So it's like I traded some toilet paper for some beer the other day to my cousin because I don't even leave the property.
Good barter.
Have you guys thought about like if things started getting like really out of hand and you needed to like vacate even your premises? Have you guys thought about that yet?
Well, vacating the premises would seem to be the last thing one would want to do. Really, the safest place you could be right now is in your house where you have everything available. Now, I am worried if the social distancing lasts for more than another month, I am worried about the start of social unrest, especially in more populated areas.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to mention that a little earlier when you were mentioning that before, Gannady. Mm-hmm. I'm hearing rumblings about some of the food banks starting to run dry, and people are starting to get a little antsy. And there are 3 things you don't mess with: food, water, and children. And one of those things is currently being screwed with, and so you might start seeing rioting soon. So businesses
I think China.
LA,
I just read an article that China killed like 50,000 dogs recently because the people are starving. So they a bunch of dogs were killed.
Oh, so they could eat them.
Yeah, within like a day.
I would hope not. I thought China just issued an edict essentially not quite banning dog meat consumption, but strongly discouraging it.
Yeah, but I think the article, I didn't read the article super thoroughly, but I think that what they're saying was, they banned it, but people are starving, so people, they went for the dogs.
Oh yeah, no, there has been a succession of crop blights. They slaughtered all of their livestock recently. They've all been hit with every single livestock flu in the books. And locust swarms from Africa have been coming in, and they're currently decimating Chinese flocks. Like, you might have seen a few Chinese news articles of them releasing tens of thousands of ducks to eat the locusts. But the ducks didn't do that, so now, on top of all the crops failing, now they're all being eaten by locusts. It's like a biblical plague.
Yeah, I read that also.
It's a tough situation.
Now, I think it's also...
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's also dependent on location. So, in my area, in northern Nevada, the stores are still full of food. They're out of a small set of specified items that people panic bought, like toilet paper and paper towels. And what I read suggests that it's a supply chain issue. Essentially, the people who were working in office settings, they were using those supplies in the office rather than at home. So when everyone went home, in addition to the panic buying, there's now more of a permanent surge in demand because people are at home using these items all the time. So the production capacity really needs to be ramped up by about 40%. And the problem is these manufacturers can't just immediately redirect the commercial supplies to the residential market because the commercial supplies are actually manufactured differently. They have these huge rolls of toilet paper or these stacks of flimsy quality paper towels. I don't know why the commercial settings get such subpar materials, but frankly, right now, I think people in households would appreciate those subpar materials over nothing. So why don't they just redirect their shipping to essentially put these commercial items in the stores? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to just do with poor planning, that we weren't, as a country, as a world, as humanity, that these types of things, scientists have been telling us forever that the next pandemic is coming. They don't know when, but they knew it was coming. And we failed to properly get prepared for it. And I think a lot of it has to do with the infrastructure of it. That here in Florida, in fact, it was just on the news here that quite a few of our commercial farms are just dumping hundreds of thousands of pounds of vegetables in the middle of the fields and just leaving them to rot because they have no way to get them to the stores, and their supply chains are so broken that they don't even know what to do with it.
Yeah, I saw a bunch of milk being dumped also. I've been seeing a lot of that.
And I think it comes down to being unprepared with the supply chains.
Right.
Personally, if I were president, I'd move the military in, declare martial law and start having these things picked up by the military and delivered to houses, based on family size, just to make sure that everyone got stuff. But, they're playing politics. They don't really they haven't even fully locked the country down yet, because everyone's going to point the finger and say, hey, you tried to turn us into slaves, and then that's going to affect election results. So unfortunately, we have, what's politically good for a politician and what's good for us, and they don't always meet up.
See, on that end, it's not just what's politically expedient, it's that thankfully they don't have the authority to do that yet.
Well, I do think in a situation like this, it should be illegal to dump food. This is essentially the same travesty that happened during the New Deal, where the federal government was forcing farmers to slaughter their livestock and burn their crops because they wanted to keep prices artificially high. Right now, it may not be the government imposing that mandate directly, but indirectly, because the government has forced so many business closures. The typical recipients of that food aren't getting it, and supply chains take some time to adapt. So I think the government needs to compensate for the damage that it inflicted. And if that means going to these farms and taking the food, buying it up, and I would provide compensation. I wouldn't just say, we're going to take it without giving you anything. I would say take it, pay them the market rate, and then distribute it to homes temporarily.
A lot of people are losing their companies, they're losing their houses, or they're having to, this meeting no longer has a time limit.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just saw it, I'm like, what the hell?
I think this is a teaser. Zoom lets you do this the first few times you set up a meeting, but if you do it too much, they'll start strictly limiting you.
Yeah.
And so, do you think the government's going to help those people get their companies back and their houses and stuff? Like, for example, like rent's like pretty tough for me to pay right now, and do you think they're gonna because they haven't said anything about preventing people from paying their rent and stuff?
Yes, so there have been some measures. I know a little bit about this. So the federal government has issued a moratorium on evictions. And you still technically owe your rent, but there's a grace period. And I believe it's something like 60 days, but I'm going to look this up in greater detail because this was actually done fairly early on. And I've been tracking this because I need to know for my job what the impacts are going to be on consumer credit. So yes, it's an immediate suspension of foreclosures and evictions for homeowners whose mortgages are insured by the Federal Housing Administration for a 60-day period, and also for lenders. So lenders who are backed by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they're bound by the same restrictions. Landlords who have mortgages that are backed by Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac can't evict their tenants for 60 days. Now, some have been playing these insidious tricks, like they change the keys on a tenant, even though they're technically not allowed to say you're kicked out. If they change the key, they change the lock so the keys can't get you in. That's almost equivalent, and that's illegal, by the way.